So welcome. This is Seattle Hempfest 2020, October 10th and 11th, an online event this year as opposed to Myrtle Edward Park here in lovely Seattle. And I'm here with several families talking about pediatric cannabis medicine in both general terms and very specific terms. My name is Jerry Whiting. I'm the moderator. I have been involved with Seattle Hempfest for many years, the last 8 years around CBD, medical marijuana, and more recently hemp, as an exhibitor, a speaker, a panelist, a sponsor of Seattle Hempfest. And this year, moderating this panel and another one tomorrow that I'm recording with the growers. So I'd like to welcome everyone who's agreed to participate and share their stories. And please go around and introduce yourselves.
Well, we'll start. So since we are the ones that invited you all to come participate in this event with us, we'll start. We're the Turners. I'm Wendy.
I'm Coltyn.
And Coltyn will just give us like 2 minutes.
Okay, so I'm a cannabis patient. I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease in 2011 after drowning in a Boy Scout Camp lake. The bacteria from the water triggered my once dormant Crohn's disease, and I was immediately put onto pharmaceutical after pharmaceutical that did either nothing or way more harm than good. And after 3 years, I was so withered away. I had no energy. I was in 4 means behind in growth and in complete failure to thrive, in a wheelchair with the doctors telling me that there's nothing else that they can do. So in 2014, when I was 14 years old, me and my dad decided to just head out to Colorado to try cannabis to treat my Crohn's disease. And shortly afterward, we were able to establish residency. I became an official medical patient. And 7 months after starting my medical cannabis treatment in Colorado, we had a colonoscopy that revealed that I was in complete clinical remission. And that's where I've been for the past 6-7 years. And I decided, I don't want to be quiet about it. I want to talk about it. So I've been trying to get the word out there that, cannabis does help for Crohn's disease.
Cool.
Yeah.
Where do you live now?
Now I live in Jersey. I live in Illinois. I was able to finally leave Colorado because Illinois had changed their laws. So I was able to move back as a patient. Crohn's disease was a qualifying condition, so I was able to get a medical card. And so that's where I'm at now.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Next up.
We'll go. My story is very, very similar to Coltyn. Oh, sorry. I'm Morgan, and this is my mum, Karen. And my story is very similar to Coltyn Turner's. I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease at 12 years old, so that was 2009. And it was also dormant until about 2015 when I got sick from lake water, exactly like Coltyn. And it made my Crohn's just flare up like crazy. I was on all different kinds of medications, which had really severe side effects too. I was down to 32 kilograms, and my dad would have to carry me into hospital, and I was really, really sick. And so my mum started researching into medical cannabis for me, and she found somebody called
Dr. William Courtney.
Who
No, are you talking about Justine Meter probably first? Yeah. Justine Meter. She's an American who had quite severe Crohn's, and she started juicing and put her Crohn's into remission using cannabis juice.
So my parents decided to start growing cannabis for me, and I started juicing it, and it helped me more than anything else ever has. So we decided to grow a pretty large amount of cannabis, and one day in 2017, we had a knock at the door, and it was the police, and they had a warrant to search our house, and they found all of the cannabis plants we had growing outside, and it was considered a commercial amount in Australia. So my dad was then arrested and questioned for about 7 hours, and that was the start of a pretty highly documented case in Australia, and our family had to go to court, and my dad was facing jail time, and it was a pretty big deal here in Australia. And we decided to go public with our story because we just thought it was ridiculous that families with sick family members were being prosecuted for trying to find something that was going to give them relief. And we were just sick and tired of people being treated like criminals for trying to help themselves. So that's why sorry?
What year was this?
So that was in 2017 that we were raided, and it was 2018 that we had to go through court. And luckily, we had very good lawyers behind us, and my dad only got a 6-month good behavior bond. So it was a really great outcome.
And what are the laws governing medical marijuana in Australia?
It's still pretty confusing for a lot of people. It's technically being legalized medically, but it's still criminalized recreationally. And it's very, very hard to access here from a doctor. And on top of that, it's very, very expensive.
Can I just add to that? Yeah. It was supposedly legalized in 2016. That is what the media was saying worldwide. But the reality is that it didn't really happen like that. All they did was switch the scheduling from poisons, the worst category, Schedule 9, I think it was, where, cannabis was classed with heroin and cocaine as a drug of abuse and a dangerous drug. So they changed the scheduling on it. But in terms of real access, it really wasn't done properly. I mean, it was almost as if they were trying to throw the Australian public a bone and not deliver any real results. So people were waiting for months and months to try and get on the legal scheme. And then they would have to have a specialist to support them. And it was very expensive. That's another thing. It was all imported from Canada.
And also it was considered like the last case scenario,
right? So
to use in terms of medicine. So you would pretty much have to have exhausted everything first to try it.
That's right. It's not a frontline medication even now. So you have to prove that your the pharmaceuticals haven't worked. Instead of allowing people to have it as a frontline medication, you're still having to jump through those hoops. It's taking a long time for Australia to, the government to finally, behave with some sanity, because the reality is that 90% of Australians want access to medical cannabis but can't get it. And another thing is, like I said, in the beginning, it was very expensive.
Still is.
Yeah, but, then we were getting Tilray oil from Canada, and it was $500 for a 25 ml bottle, if you can believe that.
Oh,
so, yeah, yep. So I mean,
so families who have children with epilepsy are having to pay up to $500 for like a 2-week supply.
Yeah. I did the calculations for one family. It would cost them $31,000 a year, and none of this is subsidized by the government. So you have to pay for it all yourself.
right. It's all out of pocket. Right.
Yeah, I mean, it was just absurd what they've done. They put up every roadblock imaginable. And there was a family here that had really pushed very hard for legalization for the medical, for the medicine. And that was Lucy Haslam did it for her son, Dan, who had bad case of bowel cancer, and sadly he died. But before he died, his parents were recommended that they try cannabis for him. He was using full extract cannabis oil. And he asked his mother as his dying wish for her to fight to have it legalized for medical patients. So she's been very active here in Australia. And, it's been a hard road for her. She's been doing this since 2014. So It's been 6 years. Yeah, and still fighting. I mean, the government here, I just don't understand it. They're missing out on a huge market opportunity too, because Australia has a perfect climate for growing In fact, they finally legalized hemp for consumption, like one of the last nations to do that. So we can now consume hemp seeds, which is good. So you can actually apply for a hemp license here now.
Right.
But in terms of anything like, anything with THC in it, the government's still clamping down on it.
Right.
Really hard.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Benjamin, what's your story? What brings you here?
Well, the thing that brings me here is CBD Charlotte's Web.
For what?
And it helps me. That helps me with epilepsy, and I guess I started at CBD when I was 14 and a half years old. Now, without the CBD, I was kind of slow. I didn't know too many things, and I have in my gene mutation that I have, which is like GRN2A, and that kind of slowed me down until we took CBD. So it's a very helpful thing that helped me with a couple of things. I couldn't sing on the radio. I couldn't do communication to a couple of people, and I couldn't respond to people quick enough. I could do, and now with CBD, I could do a fast talk. I can think before, think better with my words. Do all of these cool things that I can come up with. Have more ideas with CBD, so it's like
on your computer.
Right, on my computer and stuff. I can.
Yeah. So it's been a real game changer for you.
Right. So it's a big game changer.
I have a question for all three of the households. Actually, I have several questions. You can take them as a bundle and answer any order you want. The first facet is, what motivated you to first try cannabis? Because you've all been doing it so long. You remember when it wasn't hip, when it wasn't mainstream, and it was semi-taboo. And so I guess what got you to turn the corner and try it? And how has your family, community, friends, how have they reacted? And here's why I ask these questions. I had 3 kids. The older 2 developed a seizure disorder with the onset of adolescence. My oldest outgrew his. The middle son was the motivation for me beginning to work with CBD. And I work with a bunch of kids who have autism, seizure disorders, etc. And so I've come to learn, unlike adults, not only can kids not drive themselves, they also are part of a family unit, and the family deals with the underlying illnesses and symptoms that motivate the child to try cannabis. So I guess the 2-part question is, what made you turn the corner and give it a whirl? And how did that set off ripples in the pond in your family and your household, as well as your extended family and your community?
Let Amber go first. She has lots of kids.
Okay, yeah, definitely. Yeah, for us, Benjamin actually started having seizures at 3 years old. And so our journey was a good 10 years of pharmaceuticals that, we ended up just kind of running the gamut with several different types, but the side effects were actually worse than the seizures themselves. But we did get to a point at 9 years old where Ben did lose his ability to speak completely overnight. He went into status, and it was a long road back around 10 years old. So we had followed Heather Jackson she's the CEO of the Realm of Caring here in Colorado Springs. And we actually met each other when her son Zakai was a toddler and Ben was young. And so I kind of followed her and saw her Zakai was the second to ever have Charlotte's Web next to Charlotte herself. So we watched their story and saw him improve. And I, kind of was like, I just want to think of this as an option, we get to there. So after 10 years of seizures off and on in Ben's life and struggling academically and the memory loss, he was diagnosed at 13 with a gene mutation called GRIN2A, which actually points to not only his seizures, but also memory loss issues associated with that gene. So I, kind of was, like I said, following Charlotte's Web and seeing, the benefits of it for memory, for, inflammation and those type of things that can cause seizures. And so we decided to actually take a break from pharmaceuticals. So Benjamin, they gave us permission to wean him completely because I said his system has been on pharmaceuticals for 10 years. Can we give him a break? I just want to see if he improves in school on his own without the pharmaceuticals. We saw a slight improvement. And then we made it through the season. 9 months, he went seizure-free off of all pharmaceuticals. And Thanksgiving, for whatever reason, was the trigger for his very first seizure ever at 3 years old. So here he is, 14 and a half, and Thanksgiving night, and the seizures came back. And it was every 4 days, 4 minutes long. They were awful. I waited out a snowstorm after 2 weeks, and I drove down to Colorado Springs and picked up his first bottle of Charlotte's Web. And I just didn't want to go back to pharmaceuticals. I was like, we're free and clear right now. Let's just go this route. And so his very first dose was on December 16th, 2015. And Benjamin has remained seizure-free ever since that day. And we were on a really bad roller coaster at that time. So even for that to kind of stop everything was a miracle. He still lives in a state of epileptiform activity, according to his EEGs, but instantly we saw things improving. So family would see him improving, and that was the turning point for them, right? It wasn't just that we did this and he's been remaining seizure free, which is great. The bonus has been that he instantly was like singing, like he said, to songs on the radio, because his memory capacity allowed him to remember songs. I heard his voice in the back of the car I never heard before. And so then he was carrying on conversations with people, and though a little bit choppy, he still gets out what he needs to. And the next thing you know, it was computers, and then he's on his third 3D printer that he's bought and constructed and rebuilt, and he's creating all kinds of things. In fact, he's building a helmet. He's building a helmet right now, so he has like 3 pieces of this 3D printed, stuff going on, and that has been transformative. And so anyone that knows us, and our actual political party here in Douglas County, where we live in Colorado, Ben's kind of persuaded them to think differently about cannabis in general when it comes to legislation. So we have a lot of support here, which thankfully in Colorado, it is pretty much bipartisan on several levels, but to reach another party that might not have otherwise been as supportive has been amazing. That Ben could be an example for that. So we've changed a lot of hearts and minds here, and it's been very rewarding, but obviously he's living proof here.
So it sounds,
and they've changed a lot of laws.
You're now a cannabis activist in your own right.
Yes, we've helped work on legislation here in Colorado, along with Jack Split and Stacy Lynn on Jack's Law. And Ben and Jack actually got a standing ovation from the Senate when they were passing Jack's Law so that kids could have access in school. And we originally started out small, right? Like we just wanted to get parents to be able to administer medical cannabis on school grounds, because actually what started our journey on that political path was the week that Ben started Charlotte's Web, I had sent an email to his nurse and all of his teachers and just said, we're changing his therapy and we're adding Charlotte's Web. It's this hemp extract.
Right.
And they, I was like, within the next week, I was reported Child Protective Services. So I realized that somebody within the school district had reported us, and I told them I was going to pull a Open Records Act and find out who was involved. And the nurse ended up, standing up and calling me and confessing that she reported us, but she was actually mandated by the head of nursing here. So it wasn't just a rogue nurse. We had the head of health and wellness in our school district telling all of the nurses, if you hear of any child being given what they considered a marijuana derivative at the time in 2015, then you need to report them to Child Protective Services and let them do the work. And so that's where we got involved. And it, like he had only been on it for a week or two. But I will tell you, I didn't know that it was going to be worth the fight. Like even then, I wouldn't know that we're approaching 5 years in December, seizure free on this oil, right? And so I wouldn't have known that it was worth fighting for, but it was worth fighting for. And I'm glad that we did. So we changed that. And then in 2018, another law came out so that volunteers at the school could actually administer cannabis, but our school district won't adopt that policy now. And it's been in a fight. We've been in a fight with them currently. The law was permissive. So my word to the wise with anybody passing any cannabis laws when it comes to school and children, when school districts want, when they're saying we want local control. Okay, local control is about curriculum. When we're talking about children's health, that should not be even an issue. And so we need to make sure that children have access, that they've got emergency access. Since he doesn't use pharmaceuticals, we choose a cannabis rescue. They won't even allow to just even sit there in case he has a seizure. And so it should be there because they need to have access within 5 minutes. It needs to be immediate. But anyway, so we're still working on that, and we were actually just deemed to have a civil rights case that we had filed against the school district, and just recently that came back that there was probable cause for discrimination. And yet the school district, because the law was permissive, so don't pass permissive laws, they need to be mandatory, but the permissive law still stands, and the school district will not let him have his medicine on school grounds for someone to save his life if we can't get there. So it's a shame, and we've got some legislation that obviously didn't happen this year because of COVID. We've got another bill that we're working on to bring to the legislature next year that will hopefully not only include schools, but camps and other places where nurses and patients connect. So we're working on it.
Well done.
Thank you.
Well done.
Good.
Yes.
Well done. Really.
Speaking of Colorado and lobbying, what about y'all, Turner?
Well, we're doing it. We're doing it the best we can.
We were there with Amber and Ben and Stacy and Stacy Lynn when Jack's Law was implemented. We fought for a thousand things at the Capitol in Colorado, and then back home here in Illinois, we've done the same thing, and we've gotten the opportunity to go to California and fight, and Arizona and fight, and Boston and Arkansas and Oklahoma and Missouri. So we've been able, Canada. So we've been able to take our story and spread it all the way across the United States and Canada, and we've just been really blessed to be able to follow people like Amber and Ben and Karen and Morgan, because that helps us change those laws. So because we have to have these patient stories.
Right. So how did you meet Morgan?
Go ahead, Morgan.
So my mother has always been really interested in natural medicine, and as children, whenever we would get sick, we'd never really go to the doctor. We'd take Chinese herbs and things like that.
Yeah.
So it was really hard for my mum to see both my sister and I. My sister also has Crohn's disease, and it's very severe as well. So it was hard for her to see us on all these different medications and things that weren't really helping us. So she was the one that really started doing the research into medical cannabis. And I remember seeing Coltyn's story. I can't quite remember where from. I think Mum just looked up Crohn's and cannabis, and we found their story. And that was really the start for me. That really inspired me because their story was so similar to mine. And I just thought, wow, if they can do this, I really, really want to give it a try. And so from the start, they've always been the inspiration for me. And I got my story into a local woman's magazine here in Australia, and I mentioned that the Turner family were an inspiration for me, and I think that's when they first saw our story. And then when our story went public about, my family being charged and my father facing prison, it kind of blew up here in Australia, and I think it changed a lot of people's minds because they saw. My sister and I were both interviewed for ABC here in Australia, and people saw both my sister and I, two young women, are really affected by a chronic illness, and their father being treated like a criminal. And it really got a response out of a lot of Australians, which was surprising for us because cannabis is still quite a taboo subject for a lot of people here. But we were really blown away by the support we got from not only our local community, but Australia in general. We were expecting some, backlash from what we got, but it was really supportive. And there was a lot of people that I think changed their minds about cannabis because they saw that we were just a normal family. And it was interesting to see how many people reached out to us telling us that they were using cannabis. And it's been pretty amazing to meet everyone that we have. And at the time, being raided seemed like the worst thing that could have ever happened. And it was at the time. It was really horrible, but it made us meet a lot of people that we never would have, and had a lot of opportunities that we would have, like right now.
Right.
So
I have a question for all of you as we turn the corner on our time limit here. Would you please share with us what kind of cannabis products you take and whether you're smoking, eating, or using topicals or whatnot? I ask this both for the people watching this, but I'm, among other things, a hemp farmer, and I make medicine. I make tincture. I work with people, with kids with seizures, disorders, autism, et cetera, and adults with cancer. So I'm curious what kind of preparations you use.
Well, the great thing about cannabis is that there's a multitude of different ingestion methods that you can try. So if one doesn't work for your particular illness, it works for another. When we started, we would just take the CBD THC oil and then put them into little pill capsules, and then I would take it like a pill. And I take, each one of those pills will contain 15 milligrams of both CBD and THC, and I take 4 of those pills a day, so totaling 60 milligrams a day. And that's just for my normal Crohn's maintenance. It's what keeps my Crohn's at bay. If there are times where, I have nausea, I will vape, which has helped a lot. And if I get into a really bad hospital almost level flare, then I will smoke to relieve the pain. Sometimes my Crohn's will pop up a rash. I will take salves or lotions and I will rub it on there. And, it's worked tremendously for me. So it's good to know that I have
a toolkit that you pull out of depending upon the symptoms and the context.
Yep.
Yeah. And that goes for all of our
living
kids.
somewhere where you have a market that allows you to purchase those, or you're forced to make your own, which is totally doable, but it helps to live in what I call liberated territory, where you can go to a cash register, lay down your money, and walk out the door with the product that's lab tested, standardized, and will be there next week, next month when you need more. So you have that consistency.
Yeah, and it's very hard because, sometimes, medical is seen as just, lotion that people put on their skin to deal with a rash, or, just taking a little bit, into the mouth because you have a headache, not necessarily because you have an illness that's causing it, but people get headaches, people get rashes and things like that. So there's this gray area that no one has really established because, I take cannabis medically, but my mom, she uses salve like crazy, and she doesn't have a medical condition.
Right. So,
I'm
Ben,
bad.
what about you? How are you ingesting cannabis?
Are you speaking to us?
No, I was going to ask Ben and then Morgan.
Oh, Ben. Okay.
we didn't know who you said. Go ahead.
So I'll take like a type of oil. It'll be the oil type, and it'll go underneath my tongue.
Uh-huh.
And I'll wait for 30 seconds for it, and then so let the all saliva just to take over, and then I'll swallow it, and it has a unique taste to it. It's not good, but it's not bad either.
He gets the chocolate mint flavor, Charlotte's Web. So he takes the Charlotte's Web original formula, and
Tried other products, or have you stuck with Charlotte's Web?
we have stuck with that just because it worked since day one.
Right.
And we kind of titrated up, but even as he's gained weight and grown taller, we've kind of just maintained that 5 milliliter twice a day, and it just seems to work for him. So,
Good.
but we do have a backup plan for a rescue since we don't use the pharmaceuticals. He's actually allergic to one of the pharmaceutical rescues anyway, so it's not really an option. But we have the Cannatol on hand just in case, and that's made.
So here's a suggestion, if I may.
Yeah.
There are people who get an aura before a full-blown event.
Hmm.
It might be light sensitivity, tremors, or whatnot. I make a rescue formulation that kids respond to really well, and it's CBD and THCA, the acid form. The acid form is what's made by the plant, and not being psychoactive is the reason you can eat cannabis leaves or juice them and not get stoned. But THCA often suppresses an aura before it becomes a full-blown event. So a little tip: 5 parts CBD, 1 part THC acid, and you can find a plant or just raw cannabis and soak it in vodka or butter or whatever as but you don't want to decarboxylate it. You don't want to heat it. You don't want to smoke it.
Right.
You want the raw form.
Right. Okay.
Little bird told you.
No, that's great. That's good to know.
So Morgan, how do
yeah.
you consume?
I think I've used nearly every method there is out there. So I've juiced it, which is the thing that's helped me the most. I use CBD oil and THC oil that my parents make. We make our own balm and salve using cannabis and emu oil and different things. And I've made my own suppositories, which is really, really great for Crohn's disease because you're getting it straight to the source.
Right.
I've used edibles, smoke it. My sister relies on using cannabis every day because she has chronic nausea. So she needs to vape that every day. It's just, there's so many different, like Coltyn said, there's so many different methods for different things. So not every patient is going to use it in the same way. And, people with cancer, they use high THC and they'll use things like full extract cannabis oil. But somebody with Crohn's, you could juice it, or you could use, a THC oil that's not as high strength, or you can use suppositories. I just love that there's so many different methods, and it's really about finding what works for you. And what works for me may not work for Benjamin.
So, Coltyn and Morgan, do you incorporate turmeric in your diet or regimen, since that has very positive effects on Crohn's and irritable bowel syndrome?
I
Yes.
was taking,
Yes.
yeah, I was taking curcumin, which I think is,
Yes, it's curcumin, the active ingredient.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I make a
And-
turmeric bitters that I made for myself for other reasons, but discovered the more I learned about the endocannabinoid system and the microbiome in our guts and how that interacts, I realized that the turmeric bitters that I made for one purpose served another purpose that overlaps with people who use CBD and cannabis for gut issues.
Yeah.
It increases bile production. It normalizes the bowel. It's just a wonderful thing. I have a batch I'm pulling out tomorrow night. I go new moon to full moon, so I've got a recipe for that as well.
I would love to hear what that is.
Oh yeah, well, you know, afterwards I'll get all of your addresses. I owe Coltyn some stuff, but it comes out Thursday morning. I've been making medicine for years. My background is, I mentioned 8 years working with CBD and Project CBD and medical marijuana. Years ago, actually decades ago, I went to acupuncture school and practiced Chinese medicine in Boston. Moved to Seattle to relocate my practice, never got around to it. And after 25 years in high tech, I'm back to doing holistic medicine. So this is not my first or even second time making whole plant, full spectrum herbal preparations. And so talking to Morgan, you talked about making topicals. If you grow your own, use the root. The root was used by the Chinese and the Romans, never smoked, never eaten, used as a poultice. It does not have cannabinoids or terpenes that we recognize, but has a pair of triterpenoids that do wonderful things when applied topically. It's a formulation I've made for 7 years now. People go nuts. And I find that grandmothers and non-believers are more receptive to putting something on the outside of their body as opposed to testing something internally. And it may be the event that helps someone turn the corner and reconsider cannabis and hemp and say, you know, it's not so bad after all. I didn't get high, but I got well. And that's the difference. When you realize that the plant will get you well without intoxication, the conversation can take on a new bent, a new flavor.
Yeah, well, we make a balm and we use cannabis bud and we put emu oil in it as well, which is something that is pretty accessible here in Australia, and it's really, really amazing for inflammation. And we use arnica in there as well and calendula. And we've given it out to people and gotten really positive feedback from people who never probably would use cannabis, but like you said, they're more likely to rub it on their skin. We, one of my sister's bosses used it, and they have, what was it, fibromyalgia or chronic?
No, she has RSI.
Yeah, and she said it's helped more than anything
Oh,
else.
yeah.
So
Yeah, cool.
It's crazy how much the simple things that we take for granted are really what works for our ailments. You know,
really?
turmeric. I mean, you know, cinnamon and cayenne pepper. I mean, it's those are great things for inflammation, and we take those for granted and not use them in our daily lives to, you know, help with those things because we're so pharmaceutical based,
right?
And that's what our mindset is. And then all of a sudden, you know, we realize that hey, the herbs are so much better, and bam, we're back to the earth.
Well, people use them for thousands of years, and then all of a sudden we stopped using them, and yeah.
Been a lot of problems since. I actually wanted to be a herbalist, massage therapist, and midwife when I was in my early 20s. So that was back in the 1970s when it was really fringe. I mean, people
Don't I know?
Yeah, you would. You know, you were considered like a witch doctor back then, really.
I still am. I make no bones about it. Are you kidding? So what would you 3 households share with other families in your place to help them take that first step and not look back, but also not lose sight of the goal? Because we all know that there are obstacles in our way, legal, legislative, what have you. there are social and familial pressures, and there's this whole thing of swimming against the tide if you're in a situation where those around you don't share your beliefs, let alone your enthusiasm. So how would you coach other families?
One thing that I always say to people is that at the end of the day, you have control in your health treatment and what you do. And I think a lot of people seem to think that you have to do what doctors say. And I've fallen into that trap before in the past, and you feel pressured into doing the mainstream. But at the end of the day, you have the choice and you can make that choice. And I think that's one thing that I would definitely say to people.
Yeah, and remind people that MD does not stand for medical deity, that they are highly trained technicians, they are not demigods or goddesses, and that really you should look at your healthcare provider as a member of your team, even if you think that they're in control. And it really does, whether it's allopathic medicine or your naturopath, you really need to define the relationship as a team. You know, we want the best for you, hopefully, and as parents, we want the best for our children. So here in Seattle, most doctors in the city have encountered one or more cannabis patients before you walk in. I know that an hour away in some of the surrounding areas, people are met with less than supportive attitudes. But that's part of what we all as cannabis patients, users, activists, etc., need to coach and share with others who are facing these challenges, shall we say. They're not insurmountable, but they're just a drag because, again, a child's illness affects the whole family, especially the parents.
Right. We've always said that MD doesn't always mean doctor, it means mom and dad.
There you go. There you go. That's a more positive than my saying it is not a medical deity.
Yeah.
Well, the way I look at it is doctors are fallible. I think they like to present themselves as infallible often, but you know, Morgan and I, the whole family's we've been down a very long road, as everyone here, I think, can agree with the medical system. And I mean, you'll meet doctors that just dismiss things. They dismiss our symptoms. And we know better than any doctor what's going on in our own bodies.
Right.
That's an important point. So, like you said, they're part of our team. They're not someone who has the last word. I think that doctors definitely should be respected, but at the same time, also, people need to think independently.
And take their health into their own hands. You can never expect someone else to help you or completely cure you unless you're willing to help yourself at the same time. And I think that's where a lot of people get down the wrong road. They think that something out there is going to be a magic pill that helps them, but they have to put the work in. And it is a lot of hard work sometimes, and it's a lot of trial and error. But when you find what works for you, you really got to stick to it.
Sure.
And I think that's kind of what Amber and Ben have noticed is, you know, you guys have been on Charlotte's Web for all of these years because it works for Ben, right?
Right. And you know, for us with the doctors, I mean, of course we're in Colorado, and at the time we were like, oh, it's legal here. And, you know, we didn't know that the nurses didn't all know that, you know, it was legal here at the time, that they'd still be reporting families, you know, for the use. So, you know, I still boldly went to Ben's doctors and I said, this is what we're doing. And they've known us for a long time. But, you know, I also caution other families when they do reach out to me. I do hear from several people, you know, often like a month, you know, I'll hear people asking, what did you do? What, you know, how do I get started? And, you know, first off, if you're in a different state, you do need to know your laws. You really need to educate yourself on your laws. Now, however, if hemp or, you know, depending upon what they're wanting to try, if it is Charlotte's Web and it's legal there, then I also point them to the realm of caring. They have been a great support for our family. They support the Charlotte's Web brand, and they're the nonprofit. They're also doing research. They're keeping information. So they're kind of tracking Benjamin. We update them with surveys regularly on his use over the years. And so we can call a care specialist, and they have a dosage calculator available. And, you know, and they're also going to counsel people on them. I try to remind them that if you are taking pharmaceuticals or needing to wean, you know, your doctors might not always support you in that. And you do sometimes have to take your own, you know, medical decisions into your own hands. And I do feel that as parents, we have a gut feeling. We're living with these children every day, day in and day out, with the side effects of these pharmaceuticals. These children are raging and you know, almost suicidal. I mean, the pharmaceuticals that they had been on had suicidal thoughts and action warnings. And it's like, wait a minute here, you're not living with these kids every day. And there was much more to for us than just the seizures. So, so we kind of had to look at the big picture of it all. And then, you know, but having that support, I do send people to the realm of caring. And I know there's some other, you know, providers out there for hemp or other products that do have, you know, maybe a nonprofit support group, or, you know, support staff that can help guide you with the dosing, but, you know, also tell you, like, you're not going to take the cannabis at the same time you're using the pharmaceuticals. You've got to separate those, and, you know, and just be safe about it. And so, you know, but I have no complaints through the process. It's definitely a leap of faith in a way. We're all like, okay, is this going to work? You know, but it is a plant. And then at the end of the day, you're like, it's a plant, and it's not been toxic. And this kid, he was raging at times, and people that know him now, the Turners know it. They don't know him. They wouldn't even know that he was ever raging one day or super upset. He is the sweetest boy, so considerate and loving his life. And like, how could we not make that a first line option?
Right.
Period.
I want to thank you all. And before I forget, Ben, this is what you would feed your 3D printer, only this is made from hemp.
Yes.
I was wanting to get something like that.
Oh, we can make that happen, bro. No problem. You know, I am Pastor Gary. So I'd like to thank all three of your families, parents and children. Again, I'm a firm believer that a grave illness often engulfs the whole household, not just the patient. I want to thank you for being honest and forthright in sharing your experiences and beliefs. And to those of you listening out there, please take this to heart, internalize what they shared. And if you have questions as where to start, I always recommend Project CBDs website. It's been around forever and a day. It does not sell products. It does have links to real research papers. So everyone's got a blankety blank blank opinion. Everyone's got a bias, myself included. At the end of the day, science is science. So thank you very much. This is...
And the land is dark.